right, welcome to another episode here of our show. I'm the executive director, Keith McKeever, here of the United Way of Pekin. And today we've got Josh Wray going to be our guest. He's the City of Pekin's economic development director, and he's going to talk to us about what is economic development. How does that, impact just the average person, the average working family here in Pekin and in the community as a whole. And I'm sure you may even elaborate how that really kind of spreads even beyond just the confines, if you will, the invisible wall around Pekin and the surrounding communities. But also share some highlights and some things that are going on with the other things. The projects are going on around the community. Everybody's aware of some of the businesses that are coming, some of the projects that are already in the works. So there's a lot of exciting things going on around Pekin, a lot of really cool businesses that have made announcements recently. So really perfect timing to have Josh come on here and to share. So without further ado, if you don't know Josh, here's Josh Wray, City's Economic Development Director.
Hi, Keith. Thanks for having me on. It's great to be able to spread some good information to the community.
No problem. Always good to see you. And so, the first question there, like I said, is, what is economic development? I think sometimes people, they hear the term, they're familiar with it, but don't really know and understand what that is or how it really impacts them as a person or as a family, those kind of things.
Yeah, it's the first thing I thought of when you asked that question is I think there's a insurance commercial where all the adults are standing around a kitchen and they say something about, the economy. And a kid goes, "What's the economy?" And they all kind of just, "Oh, well, it's, and nobody really can describe it very well because it's complicated. Basically, I always talk about the economy is how we distribute resources. So what that means locally is it's everything from goods and services, jobs, quality of life, the infrastructure, transportation systems. It's all of those things that create the commerce and how we interact with each other throughout town and throughout the internet and throughout everything else. So definitely a multifaceted thing when it comes to local economic development, like what my office does. The whole purpose is to try to improve the local economy and overall improve the quality of life for our residents and members of our community. So, like I said, it's making sure we're trying to add jobs to the community, good jobs that people can actually afford to live on. It's trying to add services, everything from a hairstylist to grocery stores, and then even further along with that, recreational opportunities, tourism opportunities. All of those things feed into what economic development is, and what that means for an individual person. It's how much does your house cost? How much money can you make in this community because what jobs are available? And will your kids be able to stay here because there's opportunities for them when they grow up? So it's a very broad thing, but it can get very personal if we do something like add a manufacturing company that all of a sudden has 100 job openings that are really nice paying. That can really change some people's lives.
I think it's a really good way of looking at it. It's really big picture, but it does, have such an impact. And I like what you say about, kids staying here. I think that's a trend. I don't know what the numbers are off the top of my head. I'm sure the folks over at the high school could probably give us a better idea. Maybe the colleges could give us a better idea, but that's one of the things that we definitely need to do as a community is show our value and give those opportunities for kids to say, when they're done with high school, what's my next step? Is it college? Is it a trade school? Whatever the next step is. And then when that's done or in that process, where do I want to settle down and start my life? Is it Pekin? Is it a surrounding community? Or is it somewhere else? And everybody's got an individual decision to make, and that's their own decision to make for whatever reasons. But we have to do everything we can to make it attractive. And it's a complicated web of reasons why, but I think we've got a lot of great things that go for us. One thing I always like to say about Pekin is we've got pretty much all the stores and opportunities for relative to our size that you could expect. We've got some great new options coming online, and we've got some wonderful small businesses. But we always got to look for those those other things, like what are we missing, and what can we do to incentivize, we've got A, B, and C, but what do we do about D that we're missing? What do we got to do to get somebody to bring that to here? So I think that's
Yeah, there's lots of levers that you can push on, right? There's no one answer to making sure you have a strong local economy. Just because you land a huge manufacturing plant like a Caterpillar or something, that's going to affect the economy, but 20 years later they can close, and that can really affect your economy too. So there's lots of different levers that you want to push on. You want to make sure you have a diverse tax base. You want to make sure you have diversified housing options, different types of educational or apprenticeship training programs for people, and what that looks like at a policy level is, just at the city level with the city council, it's incentive programs to help attract new businesses. It's property transactions. The city owns land, trying to find. It's one misconception I'll go down real quick is everybody assumes that the city has like full control over what happens with a property or a building, and we don't. There are some rules, right? There's building regulations and there's zoning laws that kind of can broadly regulate things. But if somebody wants to open, a sandwich shop, we don't get to tell them, no, a sandwich shop doesn't belong there, for the most part. So, but
right, as long as it fits with zoning and you go through the health department
Yeah.
to get whatever certifications you need, if
yeah,
you got the money
yeah,
to
we
open
don't
up a
want
shop,
to
you open up a
overregulate
shop.
that. But when
Yeah.
we own the land, it's the City of Pekin's property. We have a lot more leeway, or the city council does anyway, to say we're be a little more picky. We want a certain type of development that's really going to affect the local economy. So that's kind of a nitty gritty thing that we do on a daily basis at City Hall is try to find buyers for properties and developers for properties. It's also working intricately with other organizations like the Tri-County Regional Planning Commission, the State Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, Greater Peoria Economic Development Council. I mean, all of these organizations have different resources, different roles to play. For example, we don't have a lot of workforce programs coming out of the City Hall, but Greater Peoria Economic Development has a whole arm of workforce development that we tap into and can help with. So those are some of the finer details of what actually happens on a daily basis. It's not always just big manufacturing plants that get announced. There's months of work that usually go into that, and different types of policies and programs you need to have in place to make your community attractive for something like that.
Sure, makes sense. And and it really is our whole region. And I'm sure you guys really lean on Peoria and vice versa to attract the talent, because there's a lot of people that live in Pekin and work in Peoria and vice versa. And
Yeah. I mean,
we are all interconnected. All of our communities here locally.
We're the largest city in Tazewell County, second largest city in the region. Our labor shed for the workforce is, you think typically 75, maybe 90 miles. And so our workforce population for the Pekin Peoria area is actually about 1 million people that could drive in and work in our areas. So it's definitely, that's another thing about economic development is it's not just here and this little narrow thing. It's regional, it's state level, it's national level, and it's also long term. So projects and economic, even years of lead up in order to make things actually happen. So when we talk about, what did you do today for local economic development? And I say, well, I worked on things and had communications with people that are probably not going to come to fruition for another 2 to 3 to 5 years. So that's a tricky thing too, is because everybody wants to see the results now. And it's more about, when you get a scratch on your leg, you can put a Band-Aid on it right now. But when there's something wrong with your immune system or you're unhealthy, you have to make a lifestyle change and over time really make yourself healthier. And that's really more what economic development is it's like the health of the community over the long term.
I couldn't agree more about the viewpoint and the perception. We definitely, as a society as a whole, are want satisfaction, want answers, results now. For a variety of reasons. We've just been that way for a little while now, it seems like. But really, that is any kind of strategic planning of any type, any kind of planning. You really have to look, what is the long term? Like you said, you could be talking to a business for 2 or 3 years about coming here. It could take them another 2 or 3 years to get the land and build and be fully operational and be revenue producing, which turns into tax dollars for the city that the city can then turn into infrastructure and other services. So you could be 7, 8, 10 years down the road before there's any real positive impact from the groundwork that you start today.
Exactly.
And it's kind of hard for some people to really kind of put their heads around when we're used to instant gratification on a lot of things these days. Sometimes probably social media is probably to blame for a lot of that.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody disagree with that, but my next question here is, what makes, in your opinion, what makes Pekin a really good place to invest? Versus some of our surrounding areas, which are all great places to invest too. But what makes Pekin a really good place to invest?
So that answer depends a little bit about it gets specific depending on what industry you're talking about. We just had a really good industrial announcement, so I'll start there. We have really good sites available. So when an industrial or manufacturing company is looking for a place to go, there's a few things that they really care about. Number one is the site or the building that they're looking at. They need it to be the right price. They need it to have the right infrastructure. They need it to be buildable. In this case, the company we'll talk about a little later, they really needed access to good quality water for their operation. So that was one attribute that really helped us out. And Pekin, in our Riverway Business Park and some other areas in town, we have a really good infrastructure. It's not just about roads. We've got good access to highways. It's not too far to the interstates. We have a nice railroad line that comes through town. We have a river right next door with a port over in Peoria, not too far away. We have a local airport. We have a international airport right over in Peoria. Good water and sewer infrastructure to those sites. So that was the big thing. Kind of the next facet that they and other types of businesses really care about is how easy is it to do business in the community. And frankly, that's where we really won this project, the Epic Medical Project. It's been said by them and by our mayor and a few others, we made this happen for them lightning fast. I mean, it was 45 days from we want to come to Pekin until we made it happen and got them to sign on a dotted line and went through all the appropriate, council approval and everything. And that's pretty uncommon. They were looking at other sites. They were looking at Texas. They were looking at other places in Illinois. And people were saying, oh, it's going to be 3 months. It's going to be 6 months. And, I said, which, I was definitely not lying, but I knew it was going to be tough. I was like, yeah, we can do it in 30 days. And that really perked their ears up and said, oh, like, you guys are going to make this happen for us. You're going to work with us. And we did. Greater Peoria did. Intersect Illinois, which is a site selection agency for the state. People from all these agencies, we were on calls with Singapore at 6 o'clock in the morning or 7 o'clock at night. And we were, pushing processes through, really trying to get meetings scheduled for things that had to happen sequentially. So just that kind of, they call it the white glove service, right? The ability to really care for this company's process and usher them into the community, make them feel welcome. That side of things is a big attribute, especially for large development projects that, if that can be the difference between a 3-year development and a 2-year development, is if you just have a staff and a community that wants them to come here and does whatever we can to make it happen. And that can really change things for a company and make them want to come here.
Well, time matters in a company. For companies, it's all about revenue. They've got a product to manufacture and sell. And, they want to be up and operational as quick as they can. So,
Yeah.
I think I'll speak for pretty much everybody in the community. I mean, we didn't know anything about this, and it was just like, boom, here's this announcement of this company coming from Singapore. And It's like, whoa, this is really cool. This is really wonderful, awesome news, in the announcements. And it's like, hey, this is really cool. This is some awesome stuff, paying off in the city. So
definitely usually takes longer. The retail side that, they're just as aggressive, right? Because their whole thing is about volume of being able to sell stuff. And the sooner you can start selling stuff, the quicker you can get their investment back. And on the retail side, though, it's a lot harder, right? Everybody says, well, why can't you just call Outback Steakhouse and get them to come here? Why can't you just call Sam's Club or whoever and get them to build a Sam's Club here? It's like, well, on the retail side, it's way more just about strict numbers. They need the right population. They need the right traffic along the road that they're going to be. They need the right access into their parking lot, and they need, the right median income all of that kind of stuff. So they've got basically formulas that dictate whether the community and the site fit their needs. And that's really hard, right? Because I don't know what a company's formula is. And so it's really hard for me to say this business would be right, or I know why they won't come or who will. So there's some experts in the field that we're looking at, maybe getting some help with that. But the biggest thing for me, my general philosophy, is that if you bring solid jobs in solid companies, whether they be industrial or corporate headquarters, you bring those, then the people come to fill those jobs and work here and hopefully live here. And then the retail and the housing follow the people. So if you can get the people here, the restaurants will come, because they make money off people.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Hey, I was going to ask about housing because I wrote that down because you kind of alluded to it earlier. And I've got a background in real estate. I had been in real estate for 11 years or so. That's still an issue. We obviously need more housing. We need more affordable housing, and all. I could go off on a tangent about that by itself. But what kind of things are in the works here in Pekin on the housing front? Where we at on that? If the city has any kind of policy or direction they're leaning on that.
Yeah, so that's multifaceted again, right? Because you don't just want to build a whole bunch of $500,000 houses and then nobody that works here can afford to live here. Right now, our home ownership rate is somewhere, it's right around 2/3 of people of properties are owned, people own their home, which is good, but it's not. I think it's actually below the state average, so it could be improved. But one of the things that we find, especially with high inflation, high interest rates, is that people can't afford down payments, and then just the interest on loans is expensive. So one of the things we really don't have is a lot of multifamily availability for the people looking to get into their first apartment, their first townhome, whatever, their first duplex, and start to build equity and start to build a life. So that's one of the things we're looking at. Last year, we did have a local architect contractor announce that they're going to be doing 34 duplex units at the corner of Parkway and Velde on the north side of town. So, he owns the property. It's I think somewhere around 5 acres, maybe 8 acres, and he's going to do that development. So that'll
the golf course, right? Is that right? Or
I don't know if it's course or if it's like wood line along there. But it's I think it's
right along Parkway there,
across the street. And then some of the other things. I mean, we are also talking with another kind of local regional developer about maybe doing some apartments downtown. That's a little early to be talking about that too much, but some of the other just policies or programs that the city has to try to help with this. A lot of people have heard of the TIF districts. Maybe they think they're bad. They don't quite know what they are, whatever. The whole point of a TIF district is to consolidate monies that would otherwise be spread out among the taxing bodies. So every year, you put an addition on your house or a new house is built, the property taxes go up. Sometimes they just go up because of inflation, and the city gets to pool that extra, that increment of tax. We get to pool that and do specific types of things with it. We can do infrastructure work with it. We can also incentivize development with it. So one of the things that we do is what I call a free lot program. So to try to incentivize people to come to Pekin, build new houses, move here, we offer this program through the TIF where they build their house, and depending on how much of a house, right, how valuable the house is, depends on how much money they can get back in property tax rebates. So we don't actually write anybody big checks for building a new house, but if they buy their lot for say $40,000, they can get $40,000 back in tax rebates over time after they pay their taxes each year. So that's a benefit that helps people save a few bucks if they build a house in Pekin compared to somewhere else. Another thing that was recently approved by council is a residential renovation program. So that is geared towards houses that are dilapidated, vacant, and in really bad shape, distressed residential structures. So it's not like to just help somebody replace their windows in their house, right? But it's these really bad properties in town that nobody's living in. It's going to cost a fortune to bring them back up to code, and so that somebody could live in them. And we recognize that. And rather than just let it sit there for another 20 years, or potentially the city have to demolish it because it catches fire or whatever, we be more proactive about it, provide a little bit of incentive for a contractor or somebody looking to buy a house, can get some incentive to fix that house up and, put it back on the tax rolls and make it a good property again. So there's no funding for that yet, right? We're waiting for the budget to be approved for the whole city, and maybe that'll include some funding. But that program was stood up last month, I think, or maybe 2 months ago. So that's another avenue where we're looking to take.
I do remember that one.
Yeah, and that's another good one, I think, because that'll be, the new houses. It's pretty hard to build a new house for less than $250,000 these days. And most of the time, the ones that we see coming in for that free lot program are going to be, 350 plus. And that's fine. That's one avenue for housing. But for people that can't afford that, myself included, it'd be nice if we could also help find ways to create that $100,000 to $200,000 price range. And this is one of those ways we can do it. Somebody can get a property for really cheap because it's in bad condition. They can put 50 to 100,000 into it and get some of that paid by the city, and then it becomes an affordable property.
Yeah, those the new construction, it gives an opportunity for people in those lower price point homes who maybe they're in their first or second home to move up into that kind of dream home, right, build that new home, whatever. And then it opens up inventory for those other people who've been living in an apartment, go buy that first home, whatever. That kind of opens up inventory at some point in time. I don't know where the inventory sits right now because I've been out of real estate for a little while now, but I think, it's time to get creative on some of those things. And we'll see how all that program works out, but there are a lot of houses here in town that it is far faster to rehab these properties, probably a lot cheaper. And you definitely don't want them to sit for 5 or 10 years and have to bulldoze them. And then you got an empty lot that, you get a lot less on tax rolls, and then city's got to come mow it and maintain it. And, then you're very limited on what you can rebuild back on that lot. With certain properties. So definitely makes them much more budget friendly too for rentals or to resell to those first time home buyers and whatnot. So yeah, it'll be exciting to see, when they get the funding on that, see how that program works, and see how many homes get rehabbed here, and see if that helps with some of the housing issues. Cause we hear it all the time down here at our office. People call all the time, and we know housing is one of the biggest issues that are facing people. So yeah, amongst many other issues. So, but you kind of alluded to the, all the awesome announcements on, Ross and Marshalls and all those kind of things. And I know there's also something going into the old Bob Evans. I know there's some active work going on there. Heard rumors on something eventually going into KFC. I don't know if, I know you won't say a whole lot, but, any timelines, by the way, on whatever's going into Bob Evans? Any idea? Tell us anything?
Yeah. So originally they told us they thought it would be in March. Earlier, around the turn of the year, they said it's gonna be in spring. So I don't know if materials or whatever caused them to roll their schedule back a little bit. But the biggest thing, they needed to do a pretty significant remodel. They're adding a drive-through to that property. So, but, I saw them out this morning doing work on the pavement. So I think it won't be too long. I have heard that there are job ads for the new company out on Indeed.com or wherever. I cannot tell you who it is, but I think
well, there you go. If you're looking for a job and you're happen to be watching this shortly after it's posted, there's an option for it. B, if you're curious what is in there and it hasn't been announced by the time you're watching it, might be able to find out.
I don't know about the KFC. I've had zero communications with anybody about the KFC. So anything that's out there right now, I know nothing about it.
Well, you know how rumors go around here. Somebody gets an idea and it floats around. As many years as I've been here in town, I've heard all kinds of different things about all kinds of different companies. So I wait until there's an official announcement before I buy into anything. So
yeah,
I will say, whatever comes in there, I'm excited. Hopefully it's some good food. That's all.
Yeah. The one going into Bob Evans is a national chain restaurant. I think we'll do well in Pekin. But the other ones that are going in right there, like you said, Marshalls, Ross, and Five Below have been announced. Cullinan Properties, who owns all of that property and is doing the redevelopment. They are in constant contact with other retailers. I know that they showed one of their spaces to a pretty large retailer at the end of last year. I have not heard an update on that, but that sounded like a pretty good prospect. And those are still on track as far as we know to be open this fall. So hopefully by the time back to school rolls around, you should be able to go shopping at those new stores.
There you go. They're making good progress. I drove by just the other day, and they got the front of the building off, and it almost kind of looks right now like you can kind of tell where the entrances, where the three of them will probably be roughly. So it's starting to kind of look like what the end result will probably be. So at least on the outside.
Yeah, they're spending a lot of money. I mean, that's one thing that I think people don't realize is how much money is being invested in this community right now. Just those projects alone are millions. I believe our building official told me the other day that Walmart has finally decided to move forward with their remodel. That's going to be a multi-million-dollar investment that they're going to put back into their store in Pekin. So there's a lot going on right now, and it's just I think a testament to that Pekin is worth investing in. It's worth reinvesting in. And Chris Setti from Greater Peoria Economic Development Council, one of his taglines is communities that invest in themselves get invested in. So when a company is looking to come to a new place and they see that, there's other buildings under construction, there's other retailers being announced, there's new houses going up, it adds an attraction factor for that company looking to decide where they want to go, as well as it does for new residents. I mean, if a new resident or somebody that's just coming back from college or wherever they're coming to Peoria because they got a new job at OSF, they're deciding where they're going to live. They've got a pick of all the communities around the area. If they see a lot going on in Pekin, they'll know that Pekin is a place that other people believe in, and maybe they should too. So it's pretty exciting. We got a lot of infrastructure work going on too to support all of that, and that Court Street reconstruction is going to continue. There's some federal money coming in to help with the next pieces of that. So that's going to move forward. Just excited about everything that's going on. It's really busy.
Yeah, I know that. Well, the Court Street's looking good. What's done anyway.
Right.
It is. I think everybody in town loves the fact that it seems like every time you drive down Court Street, it's a new adventure. But hey, that's road construction, and we are in Illinois, so we should all be well aware of those joys. But the last thing I'll ask you, Josh, anything new coming up? Anything that we should look forward to as residents here in Pekin? Anything that you can say?
Yeah. So, I mean, we did announce publicly at the last city council meeting that it's not totally public. There's a confidentiality piece to this, but I think it's safe enough to say the property that the city acquired, that's known as the Ludekin property, the 1,000 acres or so on the north side of town. There is a technology company, I will say, that has given us a signed letter of intent that they want to purchase 321 acres of that 1,000 in order to develop what we're going to call the Pekin Tech Park. So that's going to be a long ways off. That's one of those long-term, big projects that could be really good for the city if it moves forward. But there's a lot of hurdles. There's, a lot of infrastructure that has to be done. It's a big development. And so that's one that hopefully maybe over the next year we'll get more good public information about it. But that one's coming. And the only reason,
if you build it, they will come kind of thing?
No, I mean, it's a developer that is the end user, right? I mean, so they would come in, they would put in all the infrastructure, they would develop all the buildings and put in the users. So that's a pretty exciting one. That's kind of a game changer type of development. It's great to add 100 jobs to the community and to get a new building on 60 acres. We're so happy to have Epic Medical announce that they're coming. But just to give perspective, that property, if Epic builds everything they say they're going to, that'll generate somewhere around $300,000 a year of property tax. If this tech park builds out the way that they say that it's going to build out, it'll be closer to $20 or $30 million of property tax that'll come out of that. Again, long term, probably a 5-year development once it gets started. But that's a real game changer. One of the things we used to joke about at City Hall is like, oh, it would take $300 million to fix every road in Pekin right now. And it was just, that's the crazy pie in the sky number. And obviously we can't do that. So how do we prioritize? But if something like that happens, all of a sudden, maybe you can do that over 10 or 15 years. You can legitimately do massive improvements like that to the community with that money. So
well, certainly looks more reasonable to be able to do it.
So that's the impact we're talking about. So that's a good one. That's the Ludekin property. I know was a controversial thing that the city council decided to do. But it seems already there's significant interest. And the only reason that they looked at us is because we had, 200 plus acres available with power infrastructure nearby, because they need a lot of electricity.
Well, that doesn't surprise me with tech. So awesome. Well, Josh, I appreciate you kind of sharing with us what's happened, what may happen, and how economic development kind of affects the community. So I really appreciate it. So thanks
for having me.